I recommend that people just sit down and laundry list brainstorm, like, what are the things that I think being better connected could afford me? So
Mm.
start with your what you want to get. Start there because it's heavy on your mind anyway. And so you may know exactly, I'm seeking a new job or I'm seeking to expand my network so I can advance my career, and then narrow it down to no more than three things that would be those great gets for you over time. And then, and this may be a little bit harder, make a list of what you have to offer. What do I know about? And who do I know that might be helpful to other people so that your engine is warm to those ideas?
Welcome to the Warriors at Work show. This is Jeannie Coomber, your guide and host. This is a show for men and women in the workplace who want to move from the predictable to the potent. This is your weekly dose of inspiration with an edge. I talk with CEOs and shamans, sports marketing executives and therapists. All of us are like-minded thinkers and doers who tell stories, share wisdom, and challenge each other to have the best life possible inside and outside the office. Welcome to your Warrior Conversation. Hey everybody, it's Jeannie. Thank you so much for being here with me at Warriors at Work. So this next segment you're going to hear is a very, very timely conversation. So how connected are you? This is all about the mindset and mastery of networking. Think of it as a hit for your career, your business, and your life. And I partnered with a returning guest and a dear friend, Nancie McDonnell Ruder, because we saw an opportunity with the wild ride that is the world economy right now and the professional landscape just generally, that we realized that talking about networking is really crucial, particularly right now. It's no longer an optional skill. It's essential to career success, your growth, as well as business innovation. So today we explore how to master the art of the connection, overcoming common obstacles, and building authentic networks that drive both your professional and personal success. And Nancie is the founder of Noetic Consulting, which is a marketing and leadership consultancy that she founded in 2002. She's provided strategic guidance to clients large and small, including some very well-known names like AT&T, Discovery Channel, Georgetown University, Nike, Mayo Clinic, Walt Disney Company, just to name a few. And she is a graduate of Georgetown University, earned her MBA at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business, and she's an adjunct professor. She's also a respected author and sought-after speaker, and she is often at the podium or on a stage sharing her expertise at industry events and universities. So I couldn't think of a better person to partner with and offer our experience, our thoughts, our opinions in service to all of you. I hope you find it helpful. Nancie, thank you so much for joining me for this really important conversation.
Thank you for having me, Jeannie. I'm so happy to be back with you.
I know, returning guest,
I'm a little
and
bit of
and
a frequent flyer.
I know. And what I want to do is set the table for everybody listening and watching around the why Nancie and I decided to do a conversation about networking. And it's for two reasons. One is we both philosophically have a belief about the power of being in service to other people. And when we looked at the state of the world, the state of the economy, and the amount of change and shifting that's happening, networking and relationship building is such a crucial skill. And we have a lot we could offer in this domain, both of us owning businesses for over 20 years. This is my lifeline in terms of how and we're going to get into this, is how we
Yep, me
build
too.
and connect. And so we wanted to share whatever we know to be in service to other people. And then the second thing that we both realized is we have known each other now a couple of years because of our networking skills. The beautiful and amazing Barbara Best in Chicago introduced you and I, and she leads with so many of the attributes that we're going to talk about here, which is curiosity and positive intention and generosity.
And so we thought, well, that's pretty cool. We're doing something because we both believe philosophically in the power of relationship building, but it's also a reason why you and I even know each other.
Yes.
And we've done some
Otherwise,
referral.
would not have known each other. We're in different cities, and, the minute we connected, I think we have found so many meaningful ways that we have been able to help one another, help other people. So, yes, it's sort of the living example.
Yeah. So I'm really, really excited because I know this is going to help. And I know this is also going to expand our awareness into the power of this just by having the dialogue. So for everybody again listening, watching, really, really excited to share. And there's going to be more to come from this. And so this is one of those podcast conversations. We want feedback, we want exchange. We're going to do a lot out on LinkedIn to make sure this feels robust and again in service to as many people as we can help. So let's begin by starting with the word networking, which by the way has a very, very ick
Yeah,
connotation. It's got a branding
yes,
problem.
it does.
Um, and
Needs a
when
rebrand.
it really needs a rebrand. And that's really one of the things that we're going to do here. So I'd first like for you to share with us, how do you define networking?
Yeah. So networking to me, and to displace that thought of it being in any way transactional. To me, it's about building authentic
Mm,
and mutually beneficial relationships. And mutually beneficial is an important component. I know we'll talk more about that, where people can connect with one another, share information, and support each other's growth and success in whatever that means for each and both individuals. It's about genuinely getting to know that other person and then establishing a connection that can ideally lead to a long-term valuable relationship.
And you just emphasize something really important there. It's genuinely getting to know other people. And the way that I would characterize it would build upon what you just said is, I think of it as like building circles. We're
Yes.
all in circles, and there's other circles that we want to be a part of. And when you think about making friends, when you're going to school the first time or you're starting your job the first time, a lot of the same things that you do there relates directly to this notion of networking. I try to just reframe it as I'm building circles,
Yeah.
and I
Love
have
that.
circles for different things.
Mhm.
And when I'm trying to understand something, learn something, grow something, I get into my circles or I create circles that don't exist. And it takes a lot of the pressure off of, oh, I must transact. And that's the thing
Yeah.
that I want to dispel. It's not, it has the transactional return often, but that if you're leading with a transactional mindset, which is what can I get or how can I advance something, it feels a lot more intense and pressure. Would you agree?
Yes, I totally agree. I also think it's more likely to be disappointing if you're looking
Mm,
at it in that one-to-one way, transactional way that, what am I going to get or where am I going to get to? So, what is really perhaps hard to get at the get-go is that you have to build the connection first, and
mm,
then those great things will happen, but it's not linear. So I love the idea of the circle because you just cannot know exactly what's gonna lead to what. But if what you're focused upon is the building of the relationship and the authenticity of that,
mm,
and really showing up in a way that other people can trust in who you are, see that you're invested and you really care about who they
mhm.
are and their interests and what they're trying to do, then those great things can happen. But if you don't start with that base, I think there is a higher likelihood of disappointment. I mean, you might get the get that you were
Right.
focused on, but it's less likely if you don't start with the relationship.
I was just thinking of, again, real world example right now in this environment where there's a lot of attrition in organizations. There's a lot of interest in changing roles, changing industries, and if you're in the position where you haven't been active in the relationship building space, it can feel really scary, really, really overwhelming. And so I think what you just said is, again, this notion of building genuine relationships. It takes a lot of that transactional pressure off. Is, oh, I'm just
Yes,
getting in a dialogue. I'm just
yes.
beginning conversations. I'm showing and demonstrating my curiosity and my skill set just by the nature of how I reach out and what I ask, in those conversations where I'm trying to understand.
And I'm really glad you're making a point around that in terms of, career transitions, because there's an awful lot of that going on. And I have conversations, I would say like several times a week right now with people who seem to almost be confessing to me that, I haven't kept up with my network the way I could or should have. And they seem to have feelings about that.
Mm,
And I think that I understand that, and yet it's not helpful, like, it won't serve you, that's behind you. I often like to say, "Don't look back, you're not going that way." So,
mhm.
in the look forward, you can start doing this at any time. And so, if you haven't done it in the past, okay, well, you can start doing it today, and it can start being powerful for you tomorrow. But it's a chip away. I really look at it as a way of working and living, not as like an activity that I sometimes delve into. You know, when you practice anything over many years, you do it as part of who you are, as opposed to like, I'm
Right.
doing a thing. And I think the more you can look at it as a relationship, and the more as you can look at it as, this is part of me, how I operate, finding that authentic way to do it for yourself, the less you'll ever have to deal with that daunting feeling again, because the engine's always warm and the engine's always going. You're not starting from like, start trying to start up that engine and then stop it and then start it and then stop it.
You made a great point because this is a way of being.
Yes,
It isn't an activity that you have to engage in, again, to be transactional. If you think about everything in your life, personal and professional, that's a form of networking. When you need babysitters, when you need a plumber, when you need uh, s- some service to come to your home, or you need something for your children, you need a good pediatrician, or whatever it is, you're exercising your networking skills just by the
absolutely.
nature of doing that. And again, I like to think of it as building circles. You have circles of
Yes.
people around you.
Yes. And it's the same idea. I have many favorite books, as I know, Atomic Habits is one of my favorites. And they talk about that idea of like, whatever habit you want to develop, if you think about it in terms of your own identity, you have a better shot at developing the habit. So I am athletic, and it helps you get out and go for a run,
Mm,
because I'm an athletic person. That's part of who I am, as opposed to I have to go run, which makes
yes.
it like an activity. The other thing that I'll say from that book is, and speaking back to your circles, is that if you want to form any kind of a habit, surround yourself with other people who do that habit. And so I think we all know people who do a lot of connecting. You and I do, but there's a lot of people out there who make it their business to do that. And so I think thinking about people who are natural connectors, and how can you have that or deepen that relationship with them, can help you. It just kind of rubs off on you in a way, like whatever
Yeah.
that, you know, that habit that you're trying to embody and bring into your identity.
That's it's a perfect segue because we started getting into this in terms of the why it matters, and you shared some really powerful statistics that I want to put out there, and then talk about the why people aren't engaging. So 80% say networking is essential to career success. 79% say it's key to career progression. 79% of jobs are gained through networking, not like job boards. But yet there's a ton of disconnect, and only 48% consistently stay in touch. The barriers are discomfort, time, skills, feeling inauthentic, and it often feels transactional, and it holds people back. So tell me your thoughts. Why do you think those are the barriers? Where's it
Yeah.
coming from?
I think that there's a gravitational pull, particularly when you are busy in life and busy in your career, to get head down, I'll call it. And so you're in your day-to-day, and then the idea of taking the time to connect, because there's not an immediacy to
Mhm.
what that's going to do for you versus the immediacy that you get from, doing a critical task for your job, doing a critical task for your home life, doing a critical task that you have to do, be it, your next step on your taxes or something for your home or whatever it is. And it just gets put over there. And I think the lack of immediacy
Mm.
of the need can be it just makes it invisible and set to the side. But I think the other really important one is, and you said it right up front, the ick, the
Mhm.
ick factor around networking. I think it's not terribly dissimilar to the ick factor that people often feel about sales. It's this sense of, I don't want to come at somebody looking for something that they don't want to do with me. I can
Mm.
feel transactional. It can feel a little slimy. And I think that that whole mindset around it, I get it, because there is a certain kind of sales that is that way. And there is a certain kind of networking that is that way. But if you do it in the way that we have been describing, it's the opposite of that.
Mm.
And not only have I seen that people are very responsive, not 100% of people, and we can talk a little bit about, there are some people who will stay in the transactional space. It's a way minority group in society, but there are some of those people. But for the vast majority of people, when you start developing those circles and you're connecting authentically, it's the opposite of all that. It's like the non-ick. You have these authentic moments, and there's actually great research showing that, like, that kind of human connection enhances our happiness. So I
Mm.
think sometimes as we're going, not to get too existential, but like as we're going through our lives, and if we're head down instead of head up and developing those relationships and going out of our way to make those connections, if we're head down, we can end up feeling quite lonely and overburdened. So we're like super busy, and technically we're interacting with a lot of people, but we feel lonely. Whereas if we take that time to really be authentic, you have to let go, though, of exactly what am I going to get from this. So it is a different kind of mindset.
I could not agree more. And what I would add is some of the things that I'm seeing and hearing, because I'm talking to a lot of people that are going through this. It kicks up a ton of insecurity and fear. I haven't done this in a while. I've been in my institution, if you will, whatever my industry is, whatever you want to call it, whatever the company is, and I'm limited in my capacity to do it. And so part of it is breaking that barrier down to say, you're telling yourself something that isn't accurate. You have a lot to offer. You're genuinely curious. And so I find a lot of it is reminding yourself on who you are and what you bring to the world and how interesting you are.
Yeah, it's
And
so true.
it isn't about, I can't do this because I haven't done this in a while. This is not a muscle that I have access to. It's, I'm still just as interesting and I have a lot to offer and I'm still just as curious as I've ever been, but now I have to do it in a different system or in a different space. And that to me is the transition, is if you can just frame it as, this is just a different space that I'm going to be in, but I'm still the same person. I still have these amazing qualities and attributes that made me really smart and really successful. I just have to do it differently now. And I have to learn a new system, which is what's the system I'm trying to get into? It's a different industry. It's a different group of people. Again, it's a different circle, but
Right.
I'm still me. And I
Yes.
think it's really
And I
important.
can do it my way,
Yes.
what's authentic to me. So two things I want to mention on that. If you are a person who the idea of going into a big room at a conference and floating around and talking to a bunch of people and making as many connections as possible is something that makes you want to go get
I'm
in a
one of those
closet
people,
and
by the way. I can't
fill up the
stand it.
ball.
Oh,
You don't have to do it that way.
no.
You can do it. Some people are great in those venues, but you don't have to do it that way. You can do it in a way that's authentic to you. You can do it in a one-to-one setting. You can find small group settings, create small group settings.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be in those big venues if that's like immediately where your brain goes. And the second thing that I also want to mention, I think so often people think about networking primarily in terms of career advancement
Mhm.
and career changes. And so again, that's part of why I think there's this start-stop nature, because it's like, oh, I'm good. I'm over here working. I'll, drum up the network when and if I need. But there are a lot of other really tangible things that can happen for you and happen for others with strong networking as just like a habit in your life. There's the overall advancement within. So networking within your own organization, really knowing people in different functions at different levels is very critical to overall advancement within the company.
Mm.
Um, Business growth, the idea of just growing your acumen. So the more that you are exposing yourself to others that you can learn from, the give and take of knowledge. You think about today in this fast paced, AI driven world that we're in, knowing people who may know more about a topic than you do
Mm.
and vice versa. So your ability to develop knowledge. And then lastly, I would just say, and this may sound kind of general, but personal development. So that ability to build your confidence, build your interpersonal skills, learn a new skill, expand
Mm.
your thinking. So there's many benefits beyond just,
Yeah.
I need to find someone who will help me find a new job.
You're touching upon the power of the mindset here, because now we've defined it from our vantage points, but now we're really expanding. Here's the upside of, as
Yeah.
soon as you decide, I just want to get in a dialogue, I want to learn, I want to expand my perspective, whatever you want to call it. As soon as you decide to expand your capacity in this space, it's really limitless what it can do. And so what I want to do is, you touched a little bit about the Atomic Habits, but I also know you're an Adam Grant fan.
I am.
And so let's talk about the mindset, because I think that is also a differential when we're talking
Yes.
about this. And I think that's something that has made you and I a bit unique in terms of how we have done what we've done for over 20 years. So talk to me about givers, matchers, takers from
Yeah.
Adam Grant, which is something that you refer to a lot.
Yeah. Adam Grant has, he's very prolific. So he has many things. He's got great content. But the book Give and Take is something that made a huge impression upon me. And in fact, I wish I had read it years before I did read it. So Give and Take is all about the idea of, and he's very research backed with all of this. In our world, what are the natural inclinations that people have? And he cites some really fascinating statistics around giving, taking, and matching. And so the top 20% of most successful people, and that is defined in terms of career progression, achievement of goals, things of that nature, are givers. And the bottom 20%, least successful, are givers.
Hmm.
And then I'll talk about the matchers and takers in a second. But the difference between those two is that the givers who are at the top, they are strategically doing it in an authentic way to themselves. and they're being mindful of their own goals and those that they're interacting with. The people who are at the bottom are giving in a non-strategic way. And so they get stretched too thin. They often can get a feeling of being put upon, or they just cannot succeed in all the ways that they're trying to give because they're just trying to give to too many people in too many ways. Stretched too thin. You're for everyone. You're helpful to really no one. In between, then you have matchers and takers. So matchers are people who just tend to have, it's kind of fun, but they have a tendency to want that tit for tat. So if
Mm,
I give you a connection, someone to meet, let's say, I'm holding that and I expect you to give me one back.
like you're keeping score.
Like you're keeping score. Mhm. And so it does start to take you a little bit into a transactional space. And so that's the kind of thing you can kind of sniff it out. You can kind of get a sense for it.
Mm,
Takers, and I don't remember the percentage, but it was a quite small percentage. But, takers are people who aren't really thinking about any kind of the give back. And here's the part that I thought was the most fascinating was that takers can sniff out the givers who are at the bottom rung. And
mm.
so they tend to kind of exploit people who are willing to just give and give and give of their time, and they tend to take advantage in that space. I don't even think it's conscious necessarily,
Right.
but there can be a dynamic there. So with all of that, the kind of giving that we're talking about, the developing of circles, the doing the networking in a non-transactional manner, you do want to have a really strong idea of how are you trying to grow and what do you have to give and who are the people that you think that you're best doing that with so that you can be in that top percent and not in that bottom percent. So you do have to have a notion around what is it that you're trying to do. So I'll use myself as an example. A big part of what I am doing in the connecting that I'm doing on a regular basis is I am growing my business. And so I make it my business to talk to people who are relevant to the business that I run. So I talk to a lot of senior marketers. I talk to a lot of what I call strategic partners, people who are doing complementary services, and we help one another.
Mhm.
And so I'm not spending my time with people who are heavily in other functions that I don't have expertise in. I'm not saying I won't talk to them, but,
Mhm.
it's not a key part of what I'm focused upon. And you just think about, Jeannie, like, we only have 24 hours in a day,
Right.
and you can't spend all day on connecting because you have all of the realities of the other things you have to do. So that's part of how I think about my
Mm.
strategy of it, and where I think Adam Grant is so spot on is, there are things that you will need to say no to, so that you can do really well in the things that you're saying yes to. True in life and
Mhm.
true in connecting for sure.
And it goes back to, so we both share a service mentality. It's something we believe and value, but we also have to have boundaries around it and
Yes.
have awareness to what is it we're trying to do? How do
Yes.
we want to be in service? And the person who it changed how I viewed networking. I read a book a number of years ago. I still have it in my office. Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. And what I loved about it is he has a very simple philosophy. And my favorite thing he used to say is, "You're only as good as your network." And if you think about that, so almost like you're only as good as the company you keep. It's a representative of you. I thought
Yes.
that was, it really, really worked for me. And the others is help others to succeed first.
Yes.
And sometimes that's hard to do when you are trying to advance something or you're trying to create something. You may have an inclination to say, "Hey, we have a 30-minute touch base and I got to get to something at the end." But if you can catch yourself and say, "What would be some good questions that I would ask to take this conversation a step deeper?"
Yes.
and start to ask even the simple question of is how can I be in service to you? What is it you're looking to do?
Yes. Yeah,
What would be a good use of
absolutely.
your
And
time?
starting there as opposed to
Yes.
starting with whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. And that can be hard, particularly if you are seeking to find a new job or you're
Right.
seeking career advancement. But if you really do try to understand where that person is coming from first and what are their challenges? What are they seeking to
Mm,
accomplish? What's in their way? What's heavy on their mind? Again, you have to establish that core base of authenticity so that they're going to be willing to share those things with you. But
that's right.
there's so many great questions that you can ask and I've always just led with the questions. And the more I can learn about the person that I'm trying to be in service to, and I want to be in service to me as well, so we can have that mutual benefit,
Right.
more I get to know that core of what they're trying to do and what may be difficult for them, the better job I can do. And typically you can find a way of helping that person with whatever that is. And you may have to get quite creative and it might not be right away,
Mhm.
but the the more you can do the help first. At Noetic, at my company, we one of our core values is help and kindness, and it's help first. We always talk about it in terms of help first, like really try to be the first one to the table with giving that help.
Mm. And that actually builds on something else is when you think about you're going to get into service mentality, you want to see how you can help and offer something. The other thing that he talks about is you can't get there alone and you don't want to.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
that promotes this notion of it's circles, it's communities.
Yes.
It's who are those
And you
people
don't
that are
want
with you.
to. You don't want to because it's lonely.
Right.
I mean, we've all read and heard so many and perhaps even experienced it firsthand, like, when you get to the end of your life, people aren't talking about, like, "I got to this level at this
Mhm.
company, I accomplished this, I accomplished that." No, like, it comes down to the relationships that you've had and the connections that you've made because that's where our happiness is.
Yeah, love that. The last thing I'd offer in terms of mindset is I can't remember where I picked this up, but and whoever is who offered this to me, and I can't recall, I apologize. But one of my favorite things is whether it's in a meeting setting or an executive coaching circle, or even if it's just a new connection. I get introduced to people all the time. I think of it in terms of ask, offer, acknowledge. So I'm asking certain questions because I'm going to do my research, and I know we're going to get into the do's and don'ts. I do my research. I figure out, who are they in the world, and I love to hear people's stories. So I ask a lot of questions, and then I immediately get into how can I be in service. So I'm offering, and then the acknowledge piece is really interesting because I acknowledge their contributions, their time, but I also do a lot on the follow-up to make sure I've acknowledged their contributions to me, to that conversation, especially if it's led to something else. And so I'm just putting it out there as a powerful mindset. Ask, offer, acknowledge. And there's lots of ways you can play that into your life. But it's something that really, really stuck with me.
And with the acknowledge, I think you're touching on a really critical piece there that I have observed that people can miss, which is the follow-up. So when someone does help you with something or a connection has been made or you're helping them or whatever, either way, wherever that give or that get is, follow up and ask how it went. If you were someone making a connection, or maybe they had a job interview, or maybe they were trying out something new, follow up and ask how it went. That's a key part of keeping that mutual and authentic relationship alive and healthy. And it also can displace for things that may have gone wrong that you would want to know about. So
Yeah.
one of the things I know you do a lot of, we've done it for each other and I do a lot of as well is the connecting or introducing. And I always go for what I call the double opt-in. So I check with each person and make sure that they are a yes before I just throw somebody at somebody else. I
Mhm.
give them context for one another so, everybody knows what's coming. But even still with that, not everybody follows through.
Mhm.
Most of the time they do if you do that upfront, you know, thinking about it well and getting it well set up. But nonetheless, sometimes things happen. And so I have been surprised at times when I followed up with people and sometimes they're like, "Oh my gosh, yes, I meant to follow up with you. It was awesome and it led to this and this and this." But sometimes people will say, "Yeah, I never heard back from him or her." Right, and you
Mm.
wanna know that because that's a
Sure.
reflection on you, and
You're only as good as your network.
yes, and people get
Yeah.
busy, right? And so it may then I might go and then nudge that other person in not a shameful way, but in a like, "Hey, is this still relevant for you?" Typically, they're like, "Oh gosh, yes," and then it
Right.
happens. So part of your acknowledge that I think is so critical, and it's part of that keeping it going so it doesn't go transactional, is
Mhm.
that thoughtful follow-up.
So let's step back and get into where someone would begin. Whether maybe you're a college student getting ready to graduate, because here we are. This is going to be posted in the next couple of weeks, which is right around graduation season. Or maybe you're somebody that's in transition, or maybe you're somebody that is thinking about switching careers. Where do you begin? You talk about the word intention. So say a
Yes.
little bit more there.
Yes. So I recommend that people just sit down and laundry list, brainstorm like, what are the things that I think being better connected could afford me? And it might be so
Mm.
start with your what you want to get. Start there because it's heavy on your mind anyway. And so you may know exactly, I'm seeking a new job or I'm seeking to expand my network so I can advance my career. I'm not looking for a difference now or I just, I don't know a lot of people in this field, like whatever it is, like write it down and then narrow it down to no more than three things that would be those great gets for you over time. And then, and this may be a little bit harder, make a list of what you have to offer and
Mhm.
really like in a kind way say to yourself, I have a lot to offer. What do I know about and who do I know that might be helpful to other people so that your engine is warm to those ideas. Now, you're not going to go into your conversations and say, here are the things that I have to give, right?
Yeah.
But but it's you're going to be able to make those connections as you then start doing that inquiry when you meet with people. So I think getting your gives and get your potential gives and gets focused and articulated for yourself are really important. And then think about who are those people. And it's quality, not quantity.
Mhm.
So, really thinking about who do I already know that I could reach out to and ask for a conversation. And then in that conversation, lead with inquiry.
And what you're really highlighting is have consciousness to what you're doing and why it matters. Like, why is this something that's of importance to you? And
Yes.
going back to this mindset is we both don't look at this like a project plan that we pick up once a month. It's embedded into how we see the world. What we do on a daily basis is it never ends. So if you're very aligned with intention and you start with, okay, what am I trying to do here? Why does it
And
matter?
you can shift it over time too.
Yeah.
You can add to it and you can change it, but getting that blank page a little bit populated, I think is a really great
Mm.
place to start. And, as life goes on, you may end up having a different kind of thing. So one of the things I'm working on right now is I'm doing a board readiness program. And once I complete that, I will be looking for public board opportunities. And those are
Mm.
typically, that's on like my list. And those are typically things that happen, vast majority happen through connections and networking.
Mm.
Unsurprising, right? And so that's something that will be like new on my list. So it doesn't have to be static. It may be looking for career progression today. It may be looking for a different role tomorrow. And I do want to say, Jeannie, if we have listeners who are listening to this and thinking to themselves, well, I'm young in my career, or I've,
Mhm.
neglected my network, like, I'm not sure what I have to give right now. I promise you do. And I'll give you a quick example. I met with this young woman recently. She's young in her career, and she's looking for career progression and potentially a career move. And frankly, I'm well connected with her parents, and that's how I was connected with her. She led with inquiry with me, and based upon what she learned about me, because of the great questions she asked, she discovered that my youngest daughter was looking for an internship in marketing. And by the end of our discussion, she asked me, if relevant, would you want to connect your daughter to me? Because I went
Mm.
through that process not all that long ago. And she followed up. And now they have a relationship as part of that circle. So, here's somebody who's, I don't know how many years younger than me, but quite a few, right? Had something amazing to give. So everybody has something to offer, even if
Mhm.
you have neglected your network for a while, or you're younger in your career, like wherever you're at, you have wonderful things to give. And so when you sit down to write down what you would like to get and what you would like to give yourself that generosity in your mind of, what are those things that I have to offer? Because you do.
That's a great story, and that's a great example. I'll offer one as well that comes to mind. And this is an example of, this is somebody I hadn't spoken to in a couple of years, but I admire them deeply. And she had posted something on LinkedIn that really struck a chord for me. So I private messaged her, "Hey, it's been a while. We haven't talked, but I loved what you talked about with X, Y, and Z." And she was like, "Jeannie, we know we have a positive history, and oh, let's grab lunch." And so I had a cancellation that Friday. So I was like, "Great, let's go meet for lunch." And we reconnected on so many levels, so many life things that we have in common. And she said, "Well, why don't we do lunch in my office next time?" So a couple of weeks later, and she said, "Oh, by the way, I flipped it. We're going to do a lunch and learn. Is that okay with you?" And I was like, "Lunch and learn
I
about
love
what?"
it. Right, right.
And she said, "Well, you do a lot of the executive presence work and communications work. What if you just did like a quick how to, and we'll get 25, 30 people there?" I was like, "Sure." And I was going to be in the city anyway. And this is a subject that I love. And it turns out they have a huge need for coaching for one of their leadership levels. And so now it's turned into all these other things, purely because I saw something that resonated for me, which really rekindled our friendship, because it really meant a lot to her. And then it turned into all these other opportunities. And then I have been able to connect some of the people who reach out to me to other people for other things. And all of that came from one thing, one
Because you took
particular
the time.
opportunity. I took the
Yeah,
time,
you
I showed the
took that
interest.
minute, right? Like, it was probably like a minute. And then you also followed it with saying yes. So I think that's another critical thing, is just being open, and it can be hard because, again, we have
Mhm.
various things that get in the way for us with that. Maybe we're not extroverted, or our business, or all the other barriers we talked about. But the saying yes is a critical part too, without specifically knowing. You didn't know. You thought you were going for
That's
lunch.
right.
Then you said, so you opened up to it. Then you said yes to the lunch and learn. And then that led to this whole other path. So it's that openness as well, that
Right.
you applied to that situation, that's still going.
And the other thing is, it took effort for sure to do it, but I was open to the effort. And I
Yeah,
think that's the other
it's a
thing
great point.
that will hold people back, is this, everything we're talking about, this takes time, this takes energy, this takes effort, but the returns are they're so powerful on every level. And again, if you're rooted into the interest of being in service and really making a genuine connection with somebody, it also makes it more fun, more interesting,
Absolutely.
more fulfilling. I was so excited to be in that space with all of these new people, which by the way is a company that was not on my radar. It was what they do is also not something that was on my radar. And I had a lot of other things that day I could have done and thought, nope, this is something. This also meant a lot to the person that I connected with. And it made me feel so full and happy and alive because of something that I decided to make the effort on. So I didn't want to skip that because I thought that was really, really important. The other thing that I'd love for you to share here is this goes back to the atomic habits mindset. You talked about some really tactical things that people could do to begin. So I'd love for you to share.
Yeah. So I think that writing out your intention and then so your what I'd like to get, what I'd like to give, which that is a transactional list, I will acknowledge, but it helps you set your overall strategy. I'm a big list maker. So in addition to that list, I also recommend people generate a list of who do you already know that you think would meet with you and reach out to at least 3 and book time. You can do it this way where you're in virtual, you can book a live coffee if there's someone that's nearby you, and think about what do you think would be an easy yes for that person? Perhaps you ask for 10 minutes. If you think that there's someone
Easy
who's
yes. An
quite busy.
easy yes. I
Right.
love that.
Easy yes, right.
Mm.
And then for that, so let's say you get the meat, right? So um, bearing in mind that I don't know who these people are going to be for you. I think there's some very important tactical things to do. Be present for that dialogue. You really have to hone in on where you are and what you're doing. You don't want to be distracted. You want to really hone in and be there, be it 10 minutes, be it 30, 60, whatever it is. And make sure you've done your research beforehand. So even if this is a person that you have known for some time, we have so many great tools out there. Look them up on LinkedIn. Look not just at, title, role, tenure, but look at their posts, see what they've been up to.
Mhm.
AI also can be, and I might sound creepy to say it, but find out what's going on with them. It's there. Some people have a bigger footprint than others. But even then, when you do that, and have that prepared, when you meet, start with the inquiry. So you will have that
Mm.
backdrop, maybe a little or a lot, depending upon how, loud they are and their digital footprint. But then when you actually meet, start with that inquiry. Ask how they are and really listen. Follow up with questions about them. Some people will quickly want to turn that table and ask about you, and that's fine. Don't fight that, but make sure that you just have some really good open-ended questions. I love, and a couple of my friends make fun of me for this, but one of my favorite questions, if someone says something, they kind of throw something out there and it's interesting, but you're not exactly sure what it means, I'll just say more about that.
Mhm.
And it's amazing that it helps people know, like, I actually really want to know what you're talking about.
Mhm.
I would like to understand that better. So those are some of the things I think to get going.
Mm, I love that. So this is a perfect segue into some of the do's and don'ts because we have a cool list of do's. So what are some of the do's?
Yeah. So the do's are don't be distracted, be present, do your research before you connect, and make sure that you have, I'm going to be really specific here, at least 3 good questions to go in with. Um, think about the setting too. So what is the easy yes, right? Are you asking the person for a virtual, which is probably the easiest, but you may know that this is a person who really would probably just prefer the phone. Go for the mode that you think is going to be the right setting for them. If you are meeting in person, don't go to the coffee shop where it's so loud that you're not going to be able to hear each other. or they tend to rush you through, go to the place. I have a couple of go-to places where I know that
Mhm.
like it's nice lighting, you can hear one another, and they don't rush you out. So make sure you have the right setting there. And then the follow-up. The follow-up is so important. I think it's the place where most people fall down because we
Mhm.
we get busy. But if someone has taken the time, particularly to meet with you at your asking, so important that you do that follow-up. If all the follow-up is a very sincere thank you, that's great. But if there was some sort of suggestion they had for you, a connection they were going to make for you, and you for them, that you follow up and you make sure that those actions are thoughtfully done in a timely manner. You don't have to send a thank you the same day. Like, I think it's okay for it to be a day or two later. And
Mhm.
I tell people with connections, this may take a few days because I'm going to talk to that other person and make sure that they're open to having this connection with you too. And so just expectation set. But as you said, the acknowledge part of the acknowledge is that really thoughtful follow up. Very importantly, if you are job searching and one of your big reasons for doing the networking is that, have prepared what your ideal position would look
Mhm.
like, and ideally cite companies where you're looking for connections. In other words, make yourself easy to help.
That's right.
It's very hard for someone to help you if you say something general to them, like, I've been, senior in consumer packaged goods, working in a marketing role, and I'm looking to exit that category. That doesn't give me enough, right? It's like, okay, well,
Mhm.
there's a whole other world of like, what might that be? Whereas if someone's able to say to me, I have a specific interest in financial services, particularly mid-sized banks. Some of the ones that really rise to the top for me are X, Y, and Z. And so, in particular, I'm very interested if you know anybody at those organizations, and/or are you open to my looking at your LinkedIn contacts to see if there's that. So in whatever
Mm.
form, like, be as specific as you can be while not being narrow, so that you're easy to help.
Yeah, I love that. And the thing that I would add is also talk about it in your email. So put in an email because what I'll often say is make it so easy so that I know exactly how to introduce you. What do you want me to say?
Yes.
So
Yes.
write it out in a way where you know exactly what this person is looking for, who they are, and you're going to pick up some things also in that networking conversation. That's really, really important. But always think about it as what is it you want me to say when I'm making that introduction?
Yes, and offer to draft the language for them and say,
Right.
you can tailor this in any way you like, but here's draft language that you can cut and paste from.
I love
It
it.
makes it so much easier. I think for people to go from the blank page, people are busy, it's gonna take twice as long, whereas if you hand it to them and you keep it brief and
Right.
hardworking, they'll use it.
We talked a little bit about some of the don'ts already, and I think probably if you get nothing from this conversation, it's the don't wait. Begin immediately. Make it a part of who you are. The being late or casual, distracted, you already talked about with in person, but the same applies virtually. Is make sure you're in a quiet space. There's not a lot of stuff behind you. I'll often joke around saying, "This is the set of your show." And so, what do you want in your show? And all of this is home goods, and that's an artist, and this speaks more about my personality and my interest in the world. And so I think all of that matters. The other thing is don't ghost people. If you've made an honest, genuine connection, maintain it. And also don't ignore connection requests. Not every connection request is worth maybe your time or what you're interested in, but look at it. Don't ghost people. Again, the world is really, really small. And you talked about not forgetting the follow-up or acknowledging the introducer as well is don't forget to go back to them, Remember, you're
Yes.
only as good as your network. So if Nancy's introduced me to so and so, and I had a great conversation or a bad conversation, go back to the introducer and make sure they're in the loop. And then the last thing I'll say is don't assume that it's a private conversation. People will share their impressions of you. So it is really, really important. Remember, you're an extension of that's an extension of your circle. So what happens in that really, really matters. And again, we've talked so much about how this can enhance and expand so many aspects of your life. So that is our do's and don'ts for everybody. And that's going to be something that we're going to drive home a lot on LinkedIn. So always looking for ideas and different things that work and don't work for all the things that everything that everyone here is doing already. So let's go to the end here, Nancy, because we have some interesting thoughts around wrap up and takeaway. I think one of the things that we've talked about here, which I think is really important, is I want you to think of networking like it's like a HIIT class, or you're maintaining your health. You need consistency, you want to do it on a regular basis. It's not something that's like a project plan you pick up. It's something that's a part of your life, your career, your business, how you see the world. And we've also talked about it's not just for professional. There's a big piece here that talks about your personal life, babysitter, doctor referral. And we talked a lot about the mindset and that this is a muscle you can build and strengthen and expand upon. And my favorite is like your connections are really your competitive edge. We didn't say it that explicitly, but that very much is what we're talking about
Agree.
here.
Agree.
It's
Because
how
it's a flywheel,
it is
right?
a flywheel.
Yeah. And so once you really get that rolling, there's a lot of power in that. And it will distinguish you because
Mm.
people feel and know that they can trust you and you them.
So how I'd love to close here is I'm going to pose some questions, and I'd love for you to make one big ask of everybody following here. So my closing is I want you to think about how connected are you? Not in terms of followers or context, but in terms of real relationships. I want you to evaluate your network. What is your ask of everybody following and listening today?
I would like to ask everyone following and listening today to reach out to at least one person today that you feel would have mutual benefit for you both. And as you're listening to me make the ask, perhaps someone even popped into your mind, go with that. Now, still do the steps of, think about the reach out and what's going to be the easy yes for them, and you'll want to prepare, but just start. Like the best way to start is to just start.
I love it. So Nancie McDonnell Ruder, such a pleasure having this conversation.
Always such a pleasure to be with you, Jeannie.
I always feel like fuller in my heart every time we spend time together. And I'm really excited to see how this helps others that are listening and watching.
Me too. And I know you and I always muse that maybe it's our New Jersey roots. We're both
North
Jersey.
Jersey. Yep.
But I am honored and blessed to have you in my circles. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Warriors at Work show. If you are interested in learning more about what we do at the Warriors at Work show and platform, be sure to go over to my website, Jeannie Coomber, and subscribe to my monthly Warrior Playbook newsletter. I share everything that I'm up to month by month, as well as some lessons and insights that I've learned. I'm also interested in hearing any feedback you have about this conversation or future topics. So reach out to me directly on jc@jeanniecoomber.com or on LinkedIn. Be sure to tell your friends and your colleagues about this Warriors at Work conversation. Subscribe, review, and rate us. It's the best way to get this message out into the world. Be well.